Donna and Katie welcome Brooke back to Forrester, while Ridge and Eric watch on. Brooke claims her ex saved her life and recalls him telling her, "We'll make this right," aboard the boat. Grace convinces Liam that he has a brain tumor. Brooke is confident that Bill will treat her with no mercy. Ridge receives a text and needs to go. Brooke raises an eyebrow and inquires if there is anyone he needs to see. Taylor is at the Forrester house with Kelly, who wants to welcome her grandfather back with wedding drawings. In the design office, Electra comments on Ridge helping Brooke in the same way as Will saved her from Remy. She tells her boyfriend that it's something she will never forget. Will encourages her to open out to him. Electra reveals she is still struggling, and they embrace. During certain memories, Wood assures his girlfriend that he would always be there for her. Electra admits that fake nudes made her more careful about several things, including them. She tells her boyfriend she wants him. Will tells her there is no urgency and that he will wait, yet he appears sad when they hug. Can Brooke resist a ring? Brooke complains to Eric, Katie, and Donna in the main office about Ridge's meeting with Taylor. She tells them they had a beautiful moment in Naples. Eric and Donna attempt to reassure Brooke that things will work out with Ridge. When they leave, Nick appears to check on the blonde and clarify a few details. As Katie leaves the office, she makes sure to emphasize Ridge coming to Brooke's rescue. Nick apologizes for the boat mishap and is relieved that Brooke is well. When Nick discovers Ridge has gone to meet Taylor, he pulls out an engagement ring and admits that he had planned to propose during their boat excursion. "I love you, Brooke," she exclaims. "I love you as well." Will Ridge break Taylor's heart? Ridge has arrived at the Forrester mansion, and Taylor and Kelly are giving him the rundown on everything wedding and honeymoon related. Taylor wants to return to St. Thomas, where it all began. Since they can't do flashbacks to those times, Tay tells her granddaughter all about the treasure chest that contains her ring. Kelly gets an idea and takes off. Ridge perches next Taylor and complains about Nick intruding on their business trip to Italy, placing himself and Brooke in risk. Taylor acknowledges that losing Brooke was difficult, but reminds Ridge that she has a history of negative conduct towards him. He is not interested in speaking with the world-renowned psychiatrist, only his fiancée. Taylor, as always, discloses that she has begun arranging their wedding. Ridge lowered his gaze to the floor. Taylor begs him not to be drawn back in with Brooke. He deserves to live with someone like her. As Ridge clears his throat to discuss something difficult, Kelly interrupts to express her excitement about their wedding. Nick stood in the softly lighted living room of Brooke's massive Los Angeles estate, the city lights glittering through the floor-to-ceiling windows like a distant constellation. His heart raced in his chest in a rhythm that seemed to match the frantic energy rushing through him. The small velvet box in his pocket felt heavier than it should, the contents representing a decision that had kept him awake for weeks. He'd practiced this moment 100 times, but suddenly, standing in front of Brooke, her golden hair reflecting the warm glow of the chandelier, he felt his carefully planned words slip away. Brooke, unconscious of Nick's mental tempest, was sipping a bottle of red wine, her laughter filling the room as she told a story about her day at Forrester Creations. She looked radiant as always, her presence authoritative yet warm, a combination that had drawn Nick to her since they first met. Her eyes gleamed with that familiar mix of playfulness and vulnerability, and it was that look, the one that made him feel as if he could overcome anything, that had brought him to this point. "Nick, you're awfully quiet tonight," Brooke murmured, tilting her head, her voice teasing but also concerned. She placed her glass on the sleek marble coffee table and went forward, her bare feet silent on the soft floor. "Is everything okay?" He gulped hard, his throat dry from the glass of bourbon he'd hardly touched. "Yeah," he said, his tone harder than he wanted. "Just thinking." Her face wrinkled and she reached out, her fingertips brushing across his arm. "About what?" "You appear to be carrying the weight of the world." Nick chuckled softly, nervously. "Maybe I am." He took a long breath and braced himself. There was no going back now. His hand slid inside his pocket, fingers wrapping around the velvet box. "Brooke, there's something I need to say." Ridge perched on the edge of his leather armchair, peering into the fireplace, across town at the Forrester mansion's peaceful magnificence. The flames danced, creating shadows that appeared to mock his indecision. Taylor sat across from him, her posture impeccable as always, her hands neatly folded in her lap. She was reading a medical article, her spectacles perched on the bridge of her nose, but Ridge could tell she was only half concentrating. Her eyes would occasionally flick toward him, searching and asking. He knew he needed to do it. He needed to put an end to everything. The weight of his decision crushed against his chest, making it difficult to breathe. Taylor deserved better than half-truths and conflicting loyalties. But every time he opened his mouth to speak, the words got stuck in his throat, entangled in recollections from their common past. Their marriage, their children, the years of love and pain. All were present, weighty and obvious. Ridge, Taylor whispered gently, closing her journal and placing it aside. You've been staring at the fire as if it was going to offer you answers. What's happening? He ran his hand through his hair, but the familiar move did little to alleviate the strain building inside him. I don't know how to say this, he said, his voice barely audible above the crackle of the fire. Taylor's demeanor shifted, and her eyes narrowed slightly. She was too observant and attentive to him. Just say it, she pushed, her tone kind yet stern. Whatever it is, we can handle it. But could they? Ridge was not so sure. His heart was at war, split between the woman in front of him and the one who had always held a piece of it, no matter how hard he tried to deny it. Brooke. Always Brooke. Back at Brooke's mansion, Nick had gone to one knee, the velvet box now in his palm. The diamond ring caught the light, flashing with a promise that was both exciting and terrible. Brooke's eyes widened and her palm flew to her lips as she took a step back, leaving the wine glass on the table. Nick. Her voice was barely a whisper, a mix of amazement and fear or hope. I know this is sudden, Nick murmured, his voice firmer now, as if the act of kneeling had anchored him. But I have never been more certain about anything in my life. Brooke, you are everything to me. You are my best friend, companion, and my everything. I hope to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me? The room appeared to hold its breath, with the quiet stretch taut between them. Brooke's eyes sparkled with unshed tears, and Nick wondered if she would answer yes. But then her eyes shifted elsewhere, and he noticed it. A flash of doubt, the shadow of another's name. Nick, She hesitated, her hands tightening together. I didn't expect this. His heart fell, but he maintained a steady expression and fixed his gaze on hers. I know it's a lot, he said gently, but I mean it, Brooke. I want this. I want us. She bit her lip, her gaze scanning his face for an explanation she couldn't find. Can I think about it? She asked, her voice faint and almost weak. Nick nodded, his chest aching with disappointment. Of course, he replied, getting to his feet and quietly sealing the box. Take all the time you need. But as he gazed at her, he couldn't shake the impression that her reluctance was not about him. It was about Ridge. Always Ridge. Ridge had finally worked up the confidence to speak at the Forrester mansion. The words came slowly, each one like a knife twisting in his stomach. Taylor, I can't keep doing this to you. To us. Her face turned pale, but she did not appear astonished. What are you saying, Ridge? Her voice was solid, but there was a tremble beneath it, a crack in her resolve. I love you, he declared, and he meant it. I always will. But I'm not sure I'm in love with you anymore. Not the way you deserve. Taylor blinked back tears as her jaw tightened. It's her, right? She inquired, her voice barely above a whisper. It's always been her. Ridge did not need to inquire who she was referring to. The name hung between them, unheard yet thunderous. Brooke. He wanted to deny it, to tell Taylor she was wrong, but the truth was too much for him to bear. I don't know what I feel, he admitted, his voice raspy. But I understand I'm not being fair to you. Taylor, you deserve someone who can offer you everything. And I don't think I can. She stood, her movements elegant but deliberate, as if she was keeping herself together with sheer willpower. I've always known, she continued, her voice firm now, but her eyes showed her agony. Deep down, I've always known where your heart really lies. Taylor, I'm sorry, Ridge murmured, taking a step toward her, but she stopped him. Don't, she insisted, her voice stern. Don't make this harder than it already is. He watched as she turned and went out of the room, her footsteps echoing through the silence. The fire continued to burn, but its warmth did nothing to relieve the chill in his chest. The next morning, Brooke sat on her kitchen island, staring at the velvet box Nick had placed on the counter. She hadn't touched it since he'd placed it there, but its presence was too strong to ignore. Her coffee had gone cold untouched, as her mind raced with thoughts of Nick, Ridge, and the decisions she'd made and the ones she still had to confront. Nick had left the night before, giving her the privacy she requested, but his proposal hovered over her like a thunder cloud. She loved him. He was dependable and faithful, unlike Ridge. Despite her best efforts, Ridge remained unquenchable. And now that Nick's ring was in front of her, she felt the weight of her indecision more than ever. Her phone buzzed, interrupting her thoughts. Ridge texted, "We need to talk. Can I come over?" Her heart skipped a beat, and she despised herself for it. She quickly texted okay, and laid the phone down, her hands quivering. She had no idea what Ridge intended to say, but she knew it would change everything. When Ridge came, he appeared to have not slept. His eyes were clouded and his jaw tightened. He strolled into the kitchen, his gaze drawn to the velvet box before shifting to Brooke. "What is that?" he inquired, his tone gruff. Brooke's throat clenched. "Nick proposed," she simply stated, observing his reaction. Ridge's expression did not change, but she noticed how his hands clenched at his sides. "And?" he inquired, his tone perfectly neutral. "I haven't answered him," she continued, her gaze drawn to his. I don't know what to do." Ridge moved closer, his presence filling the space. "Brooke, I ended things with Taylor last night," he replied quietly but firmly. "I did it because I couldn't keep pretending. I can't keep lying to myself for her. I love you. I have always adored you." Her breath caught, and for a brief time the world seemed to halt. She'd heard those words from him too many times to count, but they still had the potential to break her. "Ridge," she said, her voice breaking. "I know I've hurt you," he added, his gaze fixed on hers. "I realize I do not deserve you. But I am here, Brooke. I've chosen you. If you will have me." Brooke felt as if she were standing on the edge of a precipice. On one side was Nick, who was stable and dependable, and offered her a future she could trust. Ridge, on the other hand, was passionate and unpredictable, the man who had shattered her heart and repaired it more times than she could count. She gazed at the velvet box and then back at Ridge. "I need time," she finally stated, her voice barely audible. "I need to figure out what I want." Ridge nodded, his expression full of hope. "I'll wait," he replied. "For you I'll always wait." Brooke slumped into a chair, holding her head in her hands as he left. The ring sat on the counter, posing a silent question she was unprepared to answer. Nick or Ridge? Stability or passion? It was her decision, but for the first time in a long time she had no idea what to do. The days that followed were a whirl of emotions and restless sleep. Brooke immersed herself in her work at Forrester Creations, hoping that the cacophony of fashion shows and board meetings would drown out the clamor in her mind. But no matter how busy she kept herself, the conclusion was inescapable. Nick, true to his word, gave her space, but his absence made her miss him even more. He would text her short, considerate messages that reminded her of his constancy and dependability. "Thinking about you. No pressure, just come when you're ready." Each one represented a lifeline, a reminder of the life they could create together. Ridge, on the other hand, was tenacious in his quest. He'd arrive at the office with coffee and remain after meetings to talk, his presence a constant reminder of their past. He didn't push precisely, but his eyes conveyed everything his words did not. He was fighting for her, and it was both exciting and stressful. Taylor, meantime, had withdrawn into herself. She immersed herself in her work at the hospital, filling her days with patients and studies, anything to take her mind off Ridge. But late at night, when everything was quiet, the ache would come in, harsh and unrelenting. She had loved Ridge for so long, given him so much, and now she was alone again. Brooke found herself on Taylor's doorway one evening, unsure why she had arrived but unwilling to leave. Taylor opened the door, her face cautious but not unpleasant. "Brooke," she murmured, moving aside. "Come in." They sat in Taylor's living room, a heavy quiet between them. Finally Brooke spoke. "I'm sorry," she murmured, her voice full of sorrow. "I never wanted to hurt you." Taylor's lips formed a narrow line, but her gaze softened. I know, she replied. But you always do. The words wounded, but Brooke did not argue. She knew Taylor was correct. I don't know what to do, she said, her voice breaking. Nick proposed, but Rich says he's finished with everything else. He says he wants me. Taylor laughed bitterly, but there was no malice in it. Of course he does, she replied. That is what Rich does. He wants you until he doesn't, after which he wants you again. And you let him. Brooke flinched, but she cooed in Trisma. I know, she replied softly. I don't want to make the same mistakes again. Taylor leaned forwards, her expression softening. Then don't, she replied. Brooke, you're stronger than you believe. You do not need Rich to define you. You never did. The comments hit Brooke more than she expected, and she left Taylor's house with a renewed sense of purpose, albeit the decision hung on her. She spent the next few days contemplating, wandering down the beach near her house, the sound of the waves providing a calm background to her thoughts. She reflected on Nick's proposal, the ring still resting on the counter, and Ridge's statement, his promises reverberating in her head. One night she invited Nick over. He arrived with a hopeful smile, but there was tightness in his eyes, a silent fear that she would break his heart. They sat on her balcony, the city spread out below them, and she grasped his hand. Nick, she said, her voice calm yet gentle. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. You make me feel safe, like I can be myself without having to apologize. I love you. His eyes brightened up, but he remained mute, waiting. I want to say yes, she added, her voice catching. But I need to make sure. I need to know I'm picking you for the right reasons, not to avoid something else. Nick clasped her hand and smiled gently. I told you, Brooke. Take as much time as you need. I am not going anywhere. The next day, she met Ridge at a modest cafe, where they could converse without feeling burdened by their shared history. Her heart ached because he appeared nervous, which was unusual. She didn't want to hurt him, but she couldn't continue living in the shadow of their past. Ridge, she said, her voice steely. I love you. I probably always will. But I can't keep doing it. We've harmed each other too much, and I need to figure out who I am without you. His face dropped, but he nodded, his eyes watering. I understand, he replied calmly. I just want you to be happy, Brooke. Even if it is not with me. It was not easy, but it was necessary. Brooke chose Nick not because he was the safe option, but because he was the correct one. The ring felt lighter when she put it on, and Nick's smile when she said yes was worth every doubt. Taylor, too, discovered her own path. She poured her passion into her work, helping others heal, and gradually began to heal herself. Ridge would always be a part of her, but she was greater than her love for him. She was a doctor, a mother, and a woman who could shape her own future. And so life progressed. Brooke and Nick envisioned a quiet wedding, something simple but significant, a celebration of the life they were creating. Ridge immersed himself in his designs, seeking peace in the art he had always admired. Taylor eventually found peace in her independence, her heart shattered but unbroken. The decisions they took were not easy, but they were their own. And in the end, that was sufficient.